The Star Slasher descended with a soft, graceful landing, its engines falling silent as glistening matter dust settled around it. Before them, the entrance to the Path of Enlightenment stood waiting. The craft's door slid open with a low rumble, and the group began to file out, moving at their own pace as they gathered themselves and took in the sight ahead. They stood side by side, necks craning upwards as their eyes traveled along the structure before them. The Arch of Hearts rose against the sky, massive and imposing, curving towards the heavens at what looked like to be nearly 5 stories in height. It was constructed from black and white marble. The two materials swirled together in patterns that seemed to shift and dance in the light, a representation of light and dark matter coexisting in perfect balance. Ancient spark texts and runes had been chiseled deep into the stone, telling stories of ages past, and at the arch's peak, the shape of the crest of unity marked its highest point. Old stone steps led up towards the arch. Beyond it rose a massive ancient structure, a temple that sat before the great mountain. The temple was crafted from the same stones and designs as the arch, its walls and columns overtaken by a mix of yellow and dark purple vegetation that had claimed the space as its own. Wow. Never thought I'd see something the likes of this, Voyd said, his voice filled with awe. He stood beside Jaida, both of them flanking Jay, who remained in his hover carriage, his little face turned upwards with pure wonder. The land of the Sparkborns. Can't say I ever imagined being in a place like this, Winona added, placing her hands on her hips as she surveyed the scene. I can't say I ever imagined doing anything remotely like this, Andy said, adjusting the backpack on their shoulders. This is only the start? It's huge! Coco cried out, clutching her staff. Not Warnock huge, Ellie replied with a smirk, her fur cape flapping in the gentle breeze that carried faint traces of snow. Jet's voice emerged from the back of Voyd's neck.
My scanners are telling me this structure was crafted many years ago, long before the Universal War. This is most certainly the place.
Core, Sky, Sika, Cogson, and Joby stood front and center of the gathered group, their expressions a mix of determination and anticipation. They exchanged nods with one another, then cast their gazes back towards the rest of their companions. Come, the road to the top of the mountain will take some time. Stay close and stay together. Core called out. He activated his shotgun, the mechanism humming the life in his hands, and began marching forwards with purpose. Sky activated her wheels, the soft whir of her mechanisms filling the air as she rolled after him. Joby leapt nimbly on the Sika's back, finding purchase upon it. Sika herself summoned her Nova Blade, a scythe that glowed with a soft red light. Its blade caught the ambient glow of the world around them. Cogson hobbled along behind the others, keeping pace as best as he could. Are you all ready? Voyd asked. Everyone offered their affirmations, some with words, others with nods. I can't believe I'm doing this, man, Andy muttered, taking a nervous bite out of their pickle. Let's go-y, Meowcree shouted, hobbling forwards on his little legs. The group began their ascent. Voyd and Jaida stayed close to Jay's hover carriage, making sure his tiny vehicle kept pace with their movements. The crib's small systems whirred softly as it followed along, carrying the sparkling without issue. They climbed the large steps together, passing beneath the shadow of the arch and entering into the massive corridor of the temple. Their footsteps echoed off the ancient walls, like a symphony of varied sounds. Heavy boots, wet slaps from melting snow, the soft roll of wheels accompanied by Cogson's slippers plapping down. Each member of the group took in the sight before them with wide eyes. The interior was a serene and majestic space, stretching upward into what felt like infinity. In the center of the chamber stood a colossal giant tree, its gnarled branches spreading outward to support a canopy that seemed to hold up the very roof itself. The architecture was old but elegant, with sweeping arches and sturdy columns littering the expanse. The space had been partially overtaken by nature in the most beautiful way. Lush yellows and greens cascaded from the walls and ceiling, including hanging vines and thick patches of moss that had claimed the stone as their home. Even traces of lingering snow dotted the corners of the crevices. Light streamed in from above through broken open holes in the ceiling. Scattered around the walls and standing beside the rotting pillars were statues. They were large and commanding, twice the size of Core, and spark-like in their fundamental design. They had been shaped and styled as knights. Each statue held blades and weapons in unique stances, frozen mid-motion as if ready to spring into action at any moment. Their stone visors seemed to gaze outward, watching and waiting. In the far back of the chamber, a long arching hall stretched away, its darkened interior surely leading to the path itself. Oh, wow! Look at all this stuff! Winona cried, her excitement getting the better of her as she took several eager steps forward, effectively leading the way into the main chamber. The others spread out around her, each drawn to different aspects of the incredible scene. Voyd felt as though he had turned in a complete circle, trying to take in everything at once. The scale of the place was overwhelming. Wow! It looks just the way you described it, Papa! Joby exclaimed, wonder filling her voice as she and the others continued to scan their surroundings. Reminds me of the days of old back at the Soleus, Coxon said, tilting his head back to admire the artwork carved into the walls and columns around them. How old are you? Ellie asked, resting her bat lazily over her shoulder. Good question, Coxon replied, a toothy smile crossing his features. A disjointed, toothy smile. Voyd and Jaida moved alongside Jay's carriage. The young spark hovered close by as his parents took in the spectacle. Voyd's gaze traveled along the walls, and he noticed something that made him pause. Faint but visible were biblical murals. They depicted the Sparkborns in various scenes of legend, and also shown among them were the Beyonders, the three large figures with singular-eyed masks watching over the others with their penetrating stares. His brow furrowed as he took in the sight. He then looked back to his son. No words escaped him, just thoughts. Wow, this is incredible. I never imagined I'd set foot in such a place, Jaida said, her voice hushed as she looked up at the massive tree with wonder. I can only imagine what this place looked like before nature reclaimed it, she added, her words trailing off as she tried to process the magnitude of where they stood. Voyd stood beside her, looking onward at the same vista. I've only heard about this place in stories and history lessons, he said, his voice carrying the same fascination that filled Jaida's. It's a shame Jay won't remember any of this. He glanced at his son, who was occupied with happily slapping the dashboard of his hovercrib, utterly absorbed in the simple joy of the moment. Hey, we have Jet to capture the memories for him. It's our first family adventure, Jaida exclaimed, her eyes lighting up at the thought. Voyd nodded, with a warm smile spreading his face. It was inevitable with us, he said, returning his gaze to Jay, who was back to taking in the sights around him with wide, impressionable eyes. Toonie wandered alongside the massive tree, his paws reaching out to feel its ancient bark. It was rough and weathered. Wowie zowie, aren't you old? He said softly, more to himself than anyone else in particular. Did you just say wowie zowie? Sky asked, rolling up beside him with an amused expression. Toonie shrugged with a slight flush creeping into his cheeks. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. This is all so... He stalled, searching for the right word. Bizarre? Sky offered. Toonie nodded. Yeah, never thought I'd be doing something the likes of this. Searching for gods, traveling with people I was told died. It's all a lot, you know? He explained. Sky nodded in understanding. I can imagine. At least it's with some cool, not-so-dead people, huh? Toonie cracked a smile. Yeah. As they gazed up at the tree's sprawling branches, Toonie's hand moved gently, the back of it then brushed against Sky's. They both looked down almost simultaneously, their eyes meeting as the accidental contact lingered for just a moment. Sky asked, with a hint of curiosity. Junie shook his head quickly. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Sky offered him a smirk, then playfully nudged his hand back with her own, before rolling off to examine some other sight in the vast chamber. Junie stood rooted to the spot, suddenly very aware of the butterflies dancing in his stomach. Hey, give me a closer look, Winona called out, pointing toward one of the massive statues as she stood before it. The statue was frozen in a two-handed stance on its sword's hilt, the blade pressing to the ground as if in mourning. Meowcree, give me a boost, she added, pointing toward the statue's head. It was large and round like any Sparks, with two sharp horns that were connected to a helmet design like a standard knight of old. The cat nodded. He began to elongate his body. Winona swung herself onto his back, settling in as he rose upwards. Careful, Winnie. These things are tall, Francine called out from below. Yeah, Winnie. Be careful, Zizi added, her worry matching Francine's. Francine glanced at her with a slight squint. No, only I call her that. Zizi froze mid-expression, suddenly looking like a deer caught in headlights. Oh, sorry, I didn't know it was a personal thing, she apologized, her embarrassment visible. No, you're fine. It's just our couple thing. Don't worry about it, Francine assured her, offering a warm smile to ease the awkwardness. Gotcha, Zizi returned, relieved. Andy stood nearby, loudly crunching on their pickle again as their eyes moved across the statues with an uneasy stare. Something about the place was getting to them, though they couldn't quite articulate what. As all of them continued to explore, Voyd, Jaida, and Jay rejoined Core, Sika, Joby, and Cogson. However, Jed's voice suddenly cut through the ambient sounds of the chamber, making the group pause.
Hey, friends. I don't want to alarm you, but I'm suddenly getting readings of spark essence in this area,
Jed announced, his tone shifting from casual to alert.
And they're not from you guys.
The words hung in the air, heavy with several implications. What? Then from where, and from what? Sika asked, her hands instinctively gripping her Nova Blade. There was a long pause as Jet continued the scan. Then he spoke again, sounding perplexed.
They're coming off the statues,
Jet replied. The group fell silent, everyone processing the unexpected information. What? Why would spark essence be coming off statues? Jaida asked, her voice low with concern. One by one, they set their sights on the stone sentinels that lined the walls, those frozen knights who had stood watch for so long. Voyd and Core exchanged glances across the space, their concern mirrored in each other's eyes. Then, Voyd's gaze fell on Winona, still perched atop Meowcree across the chamber, positioned dangerously close to one of the statues. Hey, Bubblegum, Voyd called out, urgency flooding his voice. Get away from the statue! Winona turned atop Meowcree's back, confusion ran across her features. What? She asked, not fully understanding the warning. Before anyone could stop her, she raised her camera and snapped a photo directly in front of the Stone Knight's chiseled visor. The flash was bright, and what followed was impossible. The statue's helmet visor suddenly erupted in a flash of brilliant dark blue light, and a sharp cry tore from its stone throat as the massive figure lurched forwards, shedding centuries of stillness like a snake shedding its skin. Winona and Meowcree screamed as they stumbled backwards, both landing on the floor with hard thuds. The rest of the group reacted with collective shock, their faces draining of color as they stared at the awakening behemoth. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Junie shouted, his voice sharp, his fists flaring with sudden energy as he stumbled backwards. The Stone Knight wobbled uncertainly for a moment before finding its footing, its hand tightened around its sword, and the blade scraped against the marble floor as it readied itself for attack. Francine lunged forward and gripped Winona's arm, hauling her to her feet. The small ANN group looked back, and backed away frantically, their eyes wide with terror as the stone figure rose to its full, imposing height. Its gaze swept across the assembled crew with an intelligence that should not have existed in something made of nothing but rock. Then, as if testing its voice, the knight bellowed 3 words that echoed through the chamber like a death sentence. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. All along the walls, the other statues began to move. Dark matter energy flared the life in their visors one by one, spreading like wildfire through a dry field. Sharp cries escaped a dozen stone throats. Their movements growing steadier with each passing second. The words tumbled from them in disjointed choruses, their voices grating and ancient. They chanted together, the sound reverberating off the vaulted ceiling. The group quickly found themselves outnumbered. "What the hell? They're alive?" Jaida shouted, her voice cracking as she slammed the hatched carriage close. The baby's curious face disappeared behind the panels. "By Matira! The Wardens! It's the Wardens!" Cogson cried. Recognition struck him like a physical blow, his voice contorting with horror as the pieces fell into place. "Blasted me, I should have known better! The entry to the path wouldn't have been so simple!" Voyd looked at him. "Wardens? Like the Sparkborn Wardens?" he asked. "What the hell are the Sparkborn Wardens?" Winona asked, as the knights gruffed and beat their chests, dark matter steam huffing from their visors. "The Sparkborns had elite guards to protect them, statues of stone given form. They left with the Sparkborns to reside in this place," Core explained. "They were believed to roam its scents, to guard their makers as they had once before." Sky didn't waste time with words. Her Nova Blades materialized in her hands with a sharp hum, their glowing edges casting green light across her determined face. Core raised a shotgun and began to fire at the nearest approaching knight. The knights swung their blades in wide, deadly arcs, their movements somehow both clumsy and terrifying. They screamed in that old language, the language of the sparks of old. "Oh Christ!" Ellie cried as she dove sideways with Coco, barely managing clear of an axe that buried itself in the floor, where they'd been standing moments before. The knight that attacked turned toward them, its visor blazing in that same blue light. It raised its weapon high and bellowed its challenge in that incomprehensible tongue. "Everyone, down that hall!" Core roared, pointing toward the long corridor that stretched ahead, hopefully toward an exit. As he barked the order, he fired at an approaching warden's knee. Stone shattered and flew through the air, and the creature stumbled, its balance disrupted but far from defeated. Core moved with a practiced efficiency. He let the shotgun retract into his armor, and to Voyd's surprise, a Nova Blade materialized in his grip. But this wasn't like his blue blade. From Core's hand emerged an orange glowing spear. He didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, Core lunged forward and drove the spear upward, burying it in the knight's throat. With a kickoff and sharp twist, mixed with a burst of energy, he cleaved the creature's head clean off in a blue blast. The massive body crumpled to the ground, pieces of stone scattering across the floor. "Go! Go!" Core shouted, waving his hand frantically for everyone to move. They ran. The group burst into motion, their feet pounding against ancient stone as they fled down the large hall. Knights swung their blades at the fleeing figures, and the group dodged and twisted, desperately evading the wild strikes. The awakened statues continued their deafening chant, their voices filling the corridor with that rhythmic sound. Somehow, despite the chaos and the rush, Andy pulled ahead of everyone else. They sprinted with a determination that bordered on ferocity, legs pumping furiously as they left the rest of the group behind. Within moments, Andy had taken the lead, their figure a blur as they raced toward whatever safety might lie ahead. The knights gave chase, their heavy stone feet crashing against the floor with enough force to shake dust and snow from the ceiling. The sound was tremendous, like a thundering avalanche. "There's so many! Oh my god!" Coco cried, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she ran. The screams of the wardens behind them grew louder, more insistent, echoing off the walls. The knights' footsteps grew closer, each impact shaking the ground beneath their feet. "Hey, got one of those sprite things?" Ellie called out, as the group reached the halfway point of their desperate sprint. Core nodded without breaking his stride. He reached into his pouch and pulled out one of the items in question, holding it up for Ellie to see. It gleamed in the dim light, both frosty and icy to the touch, radiating cold even from a distance. "Wanna try it?" he asked, his voice tight with exertion. Ellie nodded, a wild grin spreading across her face despite their desperate situation. "Pass the damn power-up!" she shouted, her voice echoing down the corridor. Core didn't argue. With a toss, he lobbed the matter sprite through the air. Ellie reached out and snagged it, her fingers closing around the frozen object. "Ellie, do you even know what you're doing?" Coco asked, her voice high with doubt and fear. "Nope," Ellie shouted back, her grin growing even wider. "But I'll figure it out." She raised her hand high and crushed the item between her palm and fingers. The effect was immediate and spectacular. A bright light exploded from Ellie's location, accompanied by an intense cold snap that swept through the corridor. Everyone could see and feel the temperature drop 10 degrees in an instant. Ellie's body began to change. Her armor shimmered and transformed, becoming something crystal-like and blue. It crawled up her limbs like frost spreading across a window, until she wore a suit of ice that gleamed as frozen armor. Her hair lightened to a bright pure white, and her eyes sharpened, taking on a pale, whiter gaze. And then, Ellie began to slip. Her boots, now made of ice, found no grip on the stone floor. She slid forward awkwardly, her arms pinwheeling for balance, as she transformed mid-sprint into something that seemed more element than person.
Whoa!
She cried out. Her transformation had turned her into an ice skater. Or rather, something trying very hard to be an ice skater. She wobbled and slid, her movements awkward but somehow effective, building momentum as she went.
"Oh, that's awesome!"
she boasted, her voice carrying easily despite their desperate flight. She gripped her bat and noticed with wonder that it now hummed with barely contained icy energy. Spinning on her heel, Ellie brought herself around to face the pursuing wardens. They were close, too close, and still chanting their incomprehensible war cry. She raised her bat high, feeling the cold energy pulse through her transformed arms, and brought it down hard against the stone floor. Nothing happened at first. Then, with a sound like breaking glass amplified 100 times, ice shards erupted from the ground before her. They rose like a forest of frozen spears, sharp and deadly, and tore through the nearest knight with tremendous force. Stone shattered and fell away as the ice pike destroyed the creature entirely, leaving nothing but crumbling rubble in its wake.
Whoa!
Ellie screamed, the exclamation torn from her lips by sheer surprise and delight. She slid backwards, struggling to maintain control of her icy form as she tried to keep pace with the rest of the fleeing group. "Use it fast, Ellie! They don't last for long!" Sika called out, her voice strained with exertion. Ellie nodded, gripping her bat more firmly. The weapon grew brighter, the ice within intensifying, building towards something powerful. She could feel the energy surging through her changed form, growing stronger with each step, an icy surge that demanded release. "Put him on ice, Ellie!" Voyd shouted, his voice carrying back to her through the chaos. Ellie didn't need to be told twice. She twisted mid-slide, finding an awkward but functional rhythm with her ice skating gait, and brought her bat down with everything she had. She saw her opening. "Exposed strike zone!" she screamed, the words carrying all of her frustration. The result was everything she'd hoped for and more. A gust of wind, cold enough to chill bone, erupted from the point of impact. It swept outward in a wave, carrying ice crystals and freezing energy with it. Before the group could process what was happening, a gargantuan wall of ice erupted from the ground, rising like a frozen tsunami to block the corridor completely. The eruption's force, however, caught everyone off guard. The blast of cold air and expanding ice struck the fleeing group like a physical wall, pushing them forward with tremendous force. They tumbled and flew, their feet slipping on newly formed ice, until they burst through the temple's exit and tumbled out on the cool grass. The group scattered across the ground, rolling and sliding from the momentum of their unexpected ejection. Some landed well, but others weren't so lucky, hitting the ground hard and hurting themselves in the process. Everyone lay where they fell, staring up at the sky and catching their breaths. Behind them, they could see the ice wall Ellie's power had created, massive and shimmering in the light. Ellie herself lay flat on her back, her ice armor already beginning to crack and fade and melt. The cold energy that had transformed her was now fading away. returning her slowly to her normal state. "Ugh," she moaned, her voice back to its normal tone. "Did I get him?" Coco was the closest, having landed only a few feet away. She hauled herself up and looked back at the ice wall. The wardens were trapped on the other side, their pounding footsteps and angry chanting muffled but still audible. "No, but you blocked them off," Coco assured, her voice filled with disbelief and admiration. "That was amazing!" Ellie gave a firm thumbs up, her face split into a tired but satisfied grin. Then, as the last of her transformation faded, she gripped her head with both hands. "Oh!" she groaned again, her eyes squeezing shut. "Ugh, brain freeze. God!" As everyone began to collect themselves, Voyd and Jaida scrambled to their feet. Their first thought, as always, was Jay. They rushed toward the carriage and found it levitating several feet above the ground, spinning slowly from the force of its exit. The hatch creaked open, and a small face peeked out. Jay looked around with wide, curious eyes. He was safe to their relief. Then, without warning, he proceeded to puke a stream of milk over the side of the carriage. Voyd and Jaida cringed at the sight, but Jay still seemed fine. He just proceeded to laugh and clap. "Ugh. Are you all okay?" Core asked, finally dissolving his orange spear. He was panting, his chest heaving with the effort of the escape. But he stood steady and watchful. Even now, he kept his eyes on the temple exit, just in case more wardens found their way through. "My legs are wobbly, but I'm okay," Cece replied, wobbling slightly as she tried to find her balance. She looked over at Andy, who had landed smoothly, and was now standing quietly. "What about you, Andy?" Andy slowly blinked their eyes and shook their head, what might have been a nod. Their expression was unreadable. They didn't speak, but the nod was enough. "Oh, good! Wow, that was exhilarating!" Cece stated. She looked ahead then, where a visible pathway cut through the tall grass. But beyond that, it all vanished into the start of a thick forest. The trees growing so close together that their branches seemed to form a solid wall of purple and brown. "Well," Voyd huffed, then gestured with his head for everyone to move ahead. "That was the beginning. Best we stay alert for literally everything else," Voyd said, as they all listened to the chanting voices still audible through the ice wall. And so they moved, their steps slow and their breaths ragged, for the forest that waited at the edge of their vision. As the group disappeared into the foliage, the ice that held back the wardens held firm. But barely. Just barely. A small crack began to appear near the base of the wall, spreading slowly upwards. On the other side, the voices of the wardens continued their endless chant, growing louder, more insistent, more angry.